Hello everybody and welcome to my review of volume number 11 of Reki Kawahara's light novel series, Sword Art Online. This is of course part of the ongoing Alicization arc, this one Alicization Turning. Appropriate because this volume represents a turning point in this story in a number of ways. The story is kind of broken up into two parts. We have the first part being the continuation of Yu-Gi-Oh! And Kirito's time at the Sword Academy. We then have an interlude to remind us that, oh yeah, Asuna is also part of this story somehow. I'll get to it. It does actually have some sort of slight foreshadowing important bit to it. And then the second part of the book, which is returning to Kirito's first-person point of view, has the whole setting of the series changing and introduces, well, some pretty big story elements that are sure to pretty much change absolutely everything about what you thought this story was really about. Now let's get into this volume because this volume is both good, terrible, problematic, and cool, and it represents everything that is probably good and terrible about Sword Art Online. I will probably discuss something that is a spoiler, but I will try and leave that more in-depth discussion until the very end of the video. I will try and be vague up until that point, but it has to be said. So, first of all, let's talk about what's not so great. So we have two female characters, Kirito and Yu-Gi-Oh's pages. We met them very, very briefly at the end of the last volume. This volume, we of course spend a bit more time with them. Just enough for us to start to care and think that, oh, maybe Kirito and Yu-Gi-Oh like them, and for them to be victimized in Kawahara's worst and most heinous and, man, I wish he would stop doing it kind of way that really is just there as a plot device to change things up. And to me, it is kind of lazy, it is kind of unnecessary, and if you really start to think about it, and this is what I'm going to talk about spoiler-wise later on in the video, it breaks the rules. Either it breaks the rules of this world that he has spent so much time trying to establish, or it represents an incredible amount of ignorance on Kawahara's part, or it just represents that Kawahara was an author who wanted to get somewhere in the story and took the fastest, easiest, and perhaps laziest way out possible. And what sucks about that is because the second part of the story that changes the setting, that changes a hell of a lot about this series, is really cool, and it starts setting up some very interesting potential places that this story is going to go, and creating new mysteries while starting to answer some other mysteries that have sort of hung over the series up until this point. It introduces a very interesting character that speaks to Sword Art fans all the way back to the first story and it's altering for the whole series. This book really is, like Kawahara says it in the afterword, and it's completely true. It is called Turning because this is a major turning point in this series. And like I said, for the first part of part one at the Sword Academy, it's not bad. It's pretty much more of what we saw in the previous volume, only it's a little bit different now that Yu-Gi-Oh! And Kirito are the more upperclassmen figures. I really wish that, in a way, there had been more time spent on that. Like, this volume's only 200 pages, which is a bit shorter than the last couple of volumes. In one sense, it's good because it means we're not getting the insane info dumps for, pages and pages and pages that we got in some of the other volumes. But in another way, I almost wish that that had been taken up by developing characters more, by creating a better solution to change the story and a better way to change the story. I just kind of feel like it was a bit of a wasted opportunity, and that this volume feels a bit rushed overall. And like I said, there is this thing that I will talk about later. And even the end of the book, it's like the ideas are cool. We're learning new things. It's getting really interesting, and it's over. All in all, the book just does feel very rushed. It feels like we could have taken more time to develop things. It feels like we could have taken more time to make me know and care about these other characters a little bit more. It feels like we could have taken more time to not have the really lazy, problematic, pissed me off kind of thing that happened. It just, yeah, this volume just feels so rushed, and I don't understand why, because it really didn't need to be. This series goes up until volume number 18. We've got a ton more books to get through before Alicization is over. I mean, heck, it's only 200 pages. You could have added another 40, 50 pages and had, I think, a better story. But again, it's like I said, this book is so emblematic of the good and bad of Sword Art. It has some really cool ideas. It has some really cool world building concepts. And it has characters doing some cool battles and everything else. But it just is kind of lazy in places. The characters really just seem to be introduced for them to be thrown away as victims. And so, I mean, there's all this good stuff, but then there's all the same stuff that we have talked about before in Sword Art, where we're just kind of like, really? Like, you could have done better, You could have done better. So I feel really mixed about this volume. It ended on a really high note for me. I mean, the last half of the book, where we get more world building, where we learn a lot more about this whole Alicization project, where we get into some more sort of philosophical ideas about why the world has turned out the way it has, finding out more about the history. I mean, all of these things really grabbed me and really pulled me in and really left me excited to see where this story is going to go. And like I said, even with Asuna's little sort of interlude in between the two parts, there is this moment, I don't want to spoil it, but there is a moment that seems, you're kind of like, it wouldn't be there if it was just useless, but I don't really see how it's going to be important. But it's a beautiful foreshadowing for something that is revealed later on in the book. And it's not the big info dump like we've had in the other parts of the series. In fact, I actually really liked the part where Asuna says, like, she now realizes how Kirito must have felt when he visited her right after the Aincrad sort of situation, and she was still locked away and asleep in the nerve gear. She, like, having her sort of be able to empathize now with what Kirito went through, like, waiting for her. I liked that. I liked that that wasn't forgotten, and I liked that, it shows that cognizance of Kirito's feelings and, understanding that I'm going through something, but he's already had to go through the exact same thing, and how he didn't give up, and how that gives her strength because he didn't give up in all those times, and how she says she wishes that she could then dive into this world and save him. I'm believing that's probably foreshadowing as well, because I don't think we're going to get through, 6 or 7 more books of this series without Asuna somehow ending up in the underworld. So, like I said, it ended so good. It's just this one part that I was like, oh. So, volume number 11, it's a mixed bag for me. Like I said, a lot of good, this one really problematic part that I'm going to talk about in another couple seconds, and then ends really, really strong. Ends really strong, made me very excited for where the series will go from this point. So, if you're reading this series, if you've been into the Alicization arc, yeah, obviously you've got to pick up this volume. I mean, it's an absolute must, because it's setting up, I think, what's going to be the real bulk of this storyline going forward. Now, like I said, I want to talk about something specific. I'm going to put the book down because I'm going to wave my hands a lot and get kind of angry about things. So this is a spoiler. So if you don't want any spoilers, feel free to stop the video now. Thank you very much for joining me. Thank you always for watching the videos. But let's get into this. If you want to watch it, if you've read this volume or know what happens, let us talk about Reki Kawahara's use of rape as a plot device, as a really, really lazy. Oh, okay. So basically, the pages are kidnapped by the slimy nobles that, have teased and tormented Yujio and Kirito in the previous volume. And they basically say that because we're nobles and they're lower nobles, we're able to punish them. I won't get into the details as to what they're getting punished for, but we can rape them because it's not against the taboo index, because we're allowed to, because, it's a noble's right. And I kind of feel like calling up Kawahara and saying, man, do you even know, you've written this taboo index, which makes it very, very clear that under no circumstances, noble or not, you cannot reduce the life force or inflict injury on another person. It's very explicit, and there's really nothing to suggest that nobles can override that. I mean, even in duels, they have to agree that, you can hit me during the duel. I feel like saying to him, do you know what happens when a virgin has sex for the first time? It's painful. And that's assuming that the act is wanted and consensual. When we're talking about rape, I mean, this is going to inflict injury. This is going to inflict pain. This is going to affect their life force. There is no two ways about it. To try and wipe that away somehow, you have broken one of your cardinal rules for this whole story, for this world. You've basically said it's okay for a woman to be violated. You can't hurt anyone else. God forbid you can't hit Kirito with a sword unless he says okay. But hey, you can damage the genitalia of a female if you're a noble. It just, to me, I mean, I'm no fan of rape in fiction in general. It's a horrible, disgusting act that I don't like in my books. And we've talked a little bit about this with Goblin Slayer. I mean, I've said I love the series, but that is one part of it that I'm really glad that moving from after volume number 1, that it's been kind of not as forefront. But I mean, I don't want to justify that, but those things at least are monsters, and it is part of the rules of the world that they do this. This violates those rules. This breaks the rules that you've set as being unbreakable. And the only way that you can try and justify saying that it's okay is that a girl doesn't get hurt by being raped. Physically. I mean, it doesn't really say anything emotionally, but physically, which is wrong. It's a lie. So it made me so upset that was in here. And that, to me, I'm just sitting there going, there was another way to do this. There was another, you could have figured something out. Come on. It just seemed to me like it felt like Kawahara wanted to move things along, and so this was his quick fix. And I mean, we have seen this already. We saw Asuna sexually assaulted by what's-his-face, the villain that nobody even cares about from Alfheim Online. And again, that seemed like, the only reason that we're doing that is to make it so that we're not feeling bad when Kirito does something that is horrifying to the dude. We saw the whole thing done with sort of the wink, wink, nudge, nudge, titillation again to Asuna by the tentacle creatures before that. I mean, this crap comes into Kawahara and into Sword Art Online and other places, and it has seemed dirty and inappropriate there. But now, to me, this just makes me angry, because I'm like, you're just, either you're being lazy, or you are just completely ignorant in a offensive way about what rape does to somebody. And now, I know the rape doesn't happen in the book. Supposedly in the web novel, it actually occurred. And I'm kind of thinking that the editor in this case stepped in and said, no, that's not happening. Probably, I'm thinking the editor's point of view on that was, if you put this in the book, it's not going to appeal as much to the wider audience. But I also wonder if maybe the editor was like, the second it actually happens, you know, they've broken the taboo index and you've kind of nullified everything that happens afterwards. So, okay, so I'm gonna stop my rant here. I think I've ranted enough about this. I think you all get my opinion about it, that I was just like, really, like, and really it was like, and then you've got these two characters that I think could have been used in a really interesting way to develop the characters, especially Yu-Gi-Oh's character. And really it seemed like the only reason you put them in there were to become fodder for rape so that you could just hustle the story along. And that bothers me. That bugs me. It just feels lazy. And like I said, it just seems to display a very blatantly ignorant attitude towards rape. And yeah, that's my rant. That's my rant. And like I said, I get that he tried to sort of sweep it under the carpet and say, oh, well, they're nobles and they're... No. The taboo index makes it very clear that even nobles can't inflict injury on someone. And that's what happens in a rape. Plain and simple. Blood is shed. Even like I said, you know what? A virgin girl, first time, usually bleeds. Okay? Like, if we're going to be talking really blunt about this, that happens. And if it's done against her will, then that's a break of the taboo index. Plain and simple, it is. You can't justify it any other way other than just to be really ignorant and insensitive. And yeah, it made me angry. You probably can tell. Anyway, rant is over. So like I said, volume number 11 of Sword Art, I mean, this part infuriated me. And it's really too bad because, like I said, aside the stuff before that and the stuff after that was really good. It would have been a great volume to me if it weren't for this. So, yeah. So anyway, those are my thoughts on volume number 11 of Sword Art Online. My next review is going to be on volume number 5 of Overlord. We've been talking about this the past couple of weeks in the weekly top 10 countdown because it's been number 1 for the past 2 weeks on the Japanese bestseller list. Well, I mean, volume 12 of Overlord has been, but nonetheless, Overlord's super popular in Japan, and for good reason. It is a really good series. I've already read about 85 pages or so of this, and I'm totally enjoying it. So that will be my next review. So if you're brand new to the channel and you love light novels, you might want to subscribe. I do 2 to 3 reviews every single week. I also do a weekly countdown of the top 10 best-selling light novels in Japan. Thank you for joining me in this video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Till then, bye-bye for now.